Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Holly MacKenna, integrative psychiatrist. I'm broadcasting from New Orleans, Louisiana, from my practice, Dara Wellness, and I'm here with some special guests who are just full of knowledge to share with all of us. The founder of the Same Here Global movement, Eric Kussin, and Dr. Andrew Pleener, who started the Same Here Psych Alliance. And I'm super excited. I can't wait to get started, and I think we should just jump right in. I see some folks are starting to watch, and they'll find us. And for those who are joining us, you can watch this later on YouTube if a friend doesn't get on in time, and we'll just get started. Yay. So Eric, I'm going to start with you, the king of the castle. And, we're talking about Same Here. If you could tell us a little bit about what Same Here Global is, what its mission is, and how you really came up with that.
Sure. Same Here Global is an organization that was based on a lived experience, something that I never thought I'd go through in my life. I was working 15 years in professional sports. I know your husband works in professional sports, so you know the lifestyle. We'll probably get more into the story itself later, but based on that lived experience and let's call it some of the missteps, some of my own, some of maybe that I experienced in terms of the directions that I was given. When I finally rose above, maybe is the best way to describe it, and started to feel more myself, I started to dive a little bit deeper into this space, questioning why some of the messages that we are fed, the way society talks about mental health, the way that we come to understand what it's about. And so kind of taking 2.5 years off through what happened to me, and then reevaluating what I wanted to do with my life moving forward. A big consideration was going back into sports because so much of my life had been devoted to that. But I think when I saw so much of what could be changed, so much of the messaging that could be turned around, so many of the ways in which we could hold hands together with practitioners and people of influence and everyday people and experts who in the research field, all working together instead of there being individual messages out there and then hoping that people can piece it together. That's when I decided to kind of dive headfirst in and say, if not now, then when, right? And so I'll say this, I know we haven't gotten too much into the weeds just yet, but working in sports, I never thought I'd wake up every day as excited as I did being in another industry. I thought sports was, growing up as an athlete, the only place where I could find that contentment, that passion, and that joy. And now being in the space of mental health and being able to help people, being able to work with very intelligent people like yourselves, and to work in a very strategic way, it's been even more rewarding than the 15 years that I spent in sports. So hopefully that's a little bit of a background, is that it's a group of a lot of people all working together on a message, trying to change the way that we perceive mental health, make it part of our everyday conversation, and really change the way in which we as a society have looked at it and talked about it before.
Okay. I'm clicking here. All right. All right, I'm going to go back to the 3 because I don't know how to make myself bigger. Okay. That's awesome. Thank you so much. I know personally, I've just found Same Here Global to be inspiring, to really resonate with what those of us who identify ourselves as integrative and functional providers want to give to the world and bring to the world. And so having a place where that is being broadcast to the world and allows us to be a part of that movement is super exciting. And kind of with that, I'm wondering, Andrew, you really kind of took the reins when it comes to getting practitioners involved in the Same Here movement. And I'd love to hear more about that and about the STAR exercises that we talk about when we are working with the Same Here folks, and just whatever you feel like is important to bring to the folks that we're talking to today.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. So, Eric, I'll let him dive into his story in a little bit, more detail than what he already shared. But essentially, Eric, he ended up having a mental health breakdown during his tenure, in sports. And he went the conventional route of treatment, didn't get any better. Many, many years went by. It was all about the illness model, asking him about the symptoms that he went through. And then these are the different medications to actually dampen those symptoms. And then every single week would go by, which would turn into months. He wouldn't get better. It would end up turning into a 4-week washout, new medication. 2.5 years went by. He was actually in workplace, and when he started, eventually got connected to an integrative practitioner. And I'll let Eric share a little bit more of the personal background behind that. But he learned all about mind-body connection. He learned about different supplements, the science behind what stress and trauma does to the nervous system, and learned about ways to heal that was a little bit more a holistic manner. So, part of our movement is to show that everybody goes through challenges in life that impacts us all. Therefore, mental health should be a topic for everybody, 5 out of 5, not just 1 in 5. But also, we need to start to learn about the non-medication ways to heal, start to be proactive. It's not always about disorder, waiting until you get to that point, letting that stress and trauma build up before you act. How we can start working to, way beyond that, way before it even starts, to start building resilience and improve wellness. So the idea behind the Same Here Psych Alliance was to be able to form a database of practitioners all over the world that understand this mind-body connection, know how to get to the source. They spend more than just 5 minutes with you. They take an integrative approach, and people don't have to wait 2.5 years like Eric did until they can finally get the help. So we'll dive a little bit more into the STAR. I'll let Eric share a little bit of the lived experience to show how, as an organization, we got to the point where we're at now.
Is that my entree into start talking more, Holly? I didn't know if there
That's why I made you beg.
Yeah, no, I'll Andrew kind of teased it a little bit. Dr. Pleener teased it, but so and sometimes it's funny when I tell the story and I tell it to, and two folks are on the screen with me who've heard it before. I'm always like shy about it, like, oh, they got to hear it again. But obviously, new for people who are checking in is, I had worked for the NBA league office, and then a WNBA startup team in Chicago, then out to Phoenix with the Suns and Mercury, back to New Jersey with the Devils, and then I'm down in Florida, and I'm 34 years old, and I take on this role of chief revenue officer, and it sounds like this big title, and I'm really excited about it. And I joke with myself a little bit about the whole corporate ladder and climbing that piece and jumping around market to market. But we hear a lot in mental health of people wearing the mask. I don't feel like I was wearing a mask at the time. It really felt like I was enjoying the day-to-day of coming into the office, no matter where the office was. It was where my passion was. But that ability to function, literally, I describe it that way, only lasted for my first 6 months of my job down in Florida with the Panthers. So a new ownership group had come in, owners with military background, West Point grads. And they hired 2 of us. So there was a CEO, and then I was his right-hand man, the CRO. And our job was to build the organization back from scratch. They got rid of a lot of the front office folks there and wanted us to rehire and started brand new culture down there. Florida is not an easy place to sell sports. So, there was a lot of changing of the guard in terms of the way in which they wanted the market to perceive them. And so the first 6 months, I was on top of the world. It was great. And back to that, not feeling like I was wearing my mask. You're in a new market. It's sunny out there. The season hasn't started yet. You're just prepping and interviewing people. So what could be wrong, right? Well, I started to lose interest for everything outside of the office, and that was the first, I would say, knock on my door of, wow, there's something major going on here. But I didn't recognize it. And I shouldn't say I didn't recognize it. I didn't do anything about it as if it was something major. Like if we twisted our ankle in a bad way, we'd go to the doctor. For me, not having interest in seeing friends or going to the gym or going on dates or doing all the things that we do outside of the office, that didn't bother me. Why? Because I was still able to function at work. So for me, it was like, oh, this is the world's way of telling me you've got this new important job you've got to spend even more time focused on. And that excuse, because that's all it was, only lasted about 2 weeks. And I found myself one morning, pushing myself off the bed like I was in quicksand to get out of the bed, walking over to my closet like I had cinder blocks on my feet, rubbing my eyes to try and make sense of what I was looking at in the closet. And it felt like a bomb had gone off in my closet, even though my closet was organized. I just couldn't make sense of the world around me. It was literally like if you programmed a artificial intelligence into a robot to be a person, and then the three of us came from behind and clipped the back of the wires, and you just saw the robot kind of like dysfunctioning like this and eyes rolling in the back of its head. That's what it felt like to be in my body. That, you know, the emails on the screen look like what was that game back in the day? Light Brights. And I couldn't make things out. I was listening to people talk and I needed them to repeat themselves. And so, you know, the fascinating piece about this with what Andrew's talking about with me going the conventional way is I brought those owners aside after a game about 2 weeks into feeling this way. And I started explaining what I was feeling and how I couldn't function not only as an employee for them, but as a human for myself, and that I needed to go get help. And they were, in 2015, this happened. They were extremely supportive for folks going back 5 years. And for them to say, Eric, take as much time as you need, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, come back, hit the ground running, was extremely, comforting to be able to hear that. Now, that being said, where did my mind go when I told them I was going to take off to get help? Well, we didn't get mental health education when we went to school, right? So the little bit that we learned when it was touched on, which are all wrong, or way too surface level, is depression means sadness, anxiety means nervousness, PTSD is for servicemen and women, right? So I'm thinking, do I have a brain tumor? Do I have traumatic brain injury from when I was younger? Why is my brain just staticky and not able to focus on anything? And so the little bit of education that I did get came from the pharmaceutical commercials that I'd seen, where, I'm describing kind of, all of them, paraphrasing what many of them look like, but it's, a cartoon character. Sometimes it's just a blob of a cartoon character, like literally a blob sitting on the ground. Sometimes they actually draw out the full person, but it's either the person or the blob has a sad face and there's sad music playing and there's a gray cloud above them. Then 15 seconds into that 30-second commercial, you introduce, this beautiful drug, right? And now this drug, all of a sudden, the great music is playing. It's uplifting. The smile the frown becomes a smile. The clouds go away. Blue sky, birds chirping. And so, what are we to think, right? And I think it's so interesting when I talk to doctors who especially understand this space, is taking a step out of that for a second and say, those of us who had no clue what the integrative space is or was, in my case, this is the only thing we're taught. Because when we grow up, we take antibiotics when we have strep throat, bronchitis, pneumonia, and we get better. So if we're watching pharmaceutical commercials that tell us this drug makes you go from this sad face to this smiley face, that's what you think is going to work. So when Andrew describes that I spent 2.5 years, what I did was I thought I was working my butt off. Even though I was horizontal, laying in a bed, staring at the ceiling for that 2.5 years, I was working my butt off because I was doing everything I could to stay alive, no matter how bad the feelings were, just trying to hold on and go to sleep so I could wake up the next day and hope that rest and whatever the new drug was that they had given me were going to kick in at some point. And, 2.5 years of waiting for a drug to kick in probably sounds, if folks are hearing on the other end of this, ridiculous. But you don't think of it that way when you're going through it, because what you're told is, oh, your brain is out of balance and you have to find the right combination of chemicals to balance it back out. Okay, so I'm working my butt off in my mind to get the chemicals to balance out. Well, not surprisingly, that doesn't work for the 2.5 years. I'm then recommended to do TMS therapy. I do that for 23 sessions. And on the 23rd session, I can't fall asleep the next night. And that morning, I remember, being on the edge of my bed, just kind of like, waiting to try and tire myself out. And I'm looking at this bottle of pills on my counter, and the only thoughts going through my mind are swallow that bottle, swallow that bottle, swallow that bottle. So obviously a suicidal ideation, and nothing bad had gone on in my life, for the 2 years prior to that. I was just laying in a bed, nothing situationally bad. And so for those thoughts to have come in my mind, they had to have come from somewhere, which we'll get to in a second. But I knew at that time I didn't want to act out on those thoughts, and I was fortunate enough to be around family. And so I voluntarily checked into a term that's still scary to a lot of people to say, is psych ward. And I go to that psych ward. I'll leave the name out of it for the time being. And I go to the attending psychiatrist the first day, and she looks at my chart. I'm looking at all of her diplomas up on the wall. So I'm thinking I'm in the top place in the Northeast. This is where the best doctors are. And she looks at my chart and says, Eric, you've tried everything there is. You've tried all the drugs, the SSRIs, SNRIs, MAOIs, tricyclics. You've tried TMS therapy. Your last resort is to do shock therapy. And when I describe that, from a patient's perspective, let me say this. When you hear from an expert, last resort, you, one, believe them because they're the expert. You, two, start to lose all hope that if that doesn't work, your life is over, right? What else are you to think if you've been laying there for that long? Whether it's 2.5 years or 2.5 months for someone. And so I, in the hospital, here's the hard thing. On my floor, I'm the only one getting ECT shock therapy. So it's 29 other patients on that floor. I don't have anyone to relate to, but they're wheeling me in and out. I do 12 sessions of this over 5 weeks. I'm sure everyone on here knows what shock therapy is, but getting my brain shocked into seizures, won't even talk about the side effects of that stuff and how miserable it was waking up from it. But I leave the hospital after those 5 weeks feeling no better than I had from the 2.5 years prior. And so feeling like my life really is over because I've tried everything according to this doctor. And I retreat back to this twin bed at 6'4" that I'm laying in and kind of, like keeping my body stiff so that I have enough room to lay there. Fortunately, I had my dog who's with me right now laying next to me. And my parents, serendipitous, I guess the way the world works is they're both retired educators. Father was a principal. My mother was a language teacher. And they go to these continuing education courses, but they went to this one particular one that was called Integrative Breathing Practices. And I didn't know what the term integrative meant, and I had never done a breathing practice in my life. So it didn't really register to me like what they were going to and why it was important. And my mother runs back from this session. She's like, you got to meet this woman, Donna. She's amazing. She helps people have chronic pain and mental health. She can't promise you. My mom, I can't get the words out fast. She was like, she can't promise you she can heal you or help you, but like she wants to at least try. She's willing to try. Okay. So I go and I meet with her, and it's kind of piggybacking on what Dr. Pleener said is, this is the first practitioner I'd been to in 2.5 years whose first question was not, Eric, what are your symptoms? Tell me what you're feeling. Her first question was, Eric, do you mind telling me about your life? Such a broad question, not like a very, stay in your lane, tell me about your parents and your relationship with your parents, just tell me about your life. And I guess this is where, the fascinating piece of it is, I've only lived one life, right? Unless I don't know about reincarnation and stuff like that. Some may believe in. But in this life, I've only lived one life. And only life I've known is what I've experienced from a young kid. And so my older brother, I'm the middle of 3 boys. From the time I was 8 years old and he was 12, so he was 4 years older than I am. This is what my next 20 years of life looked like from 8 to 28. So my brother broke his femur bone in a sporting accident, was in a body cast for a year and homeschooled. Heals from that, and a month later gets diagnosed with ALL, children's form of leukemia. So 5 years of chemo and radiation, but miraculously goes into remission after 5 years. A month later, he's in a Jeep Wrangler with his friends, and open Jeep, no top or back, no seatbelt in the back. My brother's in the back seat, flies out of the back, lands on his head, cracks his head open, loses partial vision in his eyes, in ICU for a month. Heals from that, goes to college. He's in college between his junior and senior year. He's feeling a pain in his knee. They do all the sports medicine testing, and all that comes back negative, but they do blood tests, and they find out that his leukemia has come back, the same one that he had as a child. So now they have to give him a much stronger chemo regimen to really knock that cancer out of his system. And what we know about chemo is, while it attacks the cancerous cells, and unfortunately, depending on which type and what dosage, it attacks the healthy cells as well. So eventually, while he's taking this medication, we switch places. I go up to college. He's back in Long Island now going to law school. And I get a call from my father saying that my brother's developed 105 fever. They have to take him to the hospital. I'm staying on the phone. We find out that his body's gone into what's called septic shock, where organs start attacking themselves, and that leads him into a coma. So now I drive home And I'm not in the virtual way that people are taking classes now, but essentially, getting homework assignments for my friends and trying to drive back and forth. He stays in that coma for 3 months. We don't know if he's going to wake or if he's going to have any brain activity. Finally wakes, miraculously has his full faculties about him cognitively. We have no idea how. And everything's going well, but his kidneys are failing from the rigor of the septic shock. So now he has to go on dialysis, goes on dialysis. We all get tested to see who's the closest match. My father donates a kidney. That's successful. Knock on wood, we're all going in the right direction. There's my dog barking. And shortly after that, in the course of span of a year, 3 of my close friends in my 20s all pass away unexpectedly of heart conditions. And so, sharing that story with this woman, Donna, her mouth was dropped. You guys have heard it many times before, but her first question to me is, Eric, is there anything else that happened to you in your childhood that you want to tell me about? And I facetiously, or just intellectually, it didn't make sense to me, because I said, what do you mean happened to me? These things happen to my brother. They happen to my friends. They didn't happen to me. And she used a sports analogy. She said, Eric, you had a front row seat for this game of life that just played out in front of you, and pretend that game of life was like a front row seat where you're wearing your suit and tie like you would for a game, but it's a wrestling match, 2 different rings, and it's a muddy wrestling match. Your brother's in one ring and your friends are in the other ring, and every move they make is like a wrestling move to stay alive. And that mud that they're wrestling in is splattering every time they make a move, and it's hitting you in your suit, and it's hitting your tie. And what you don't do during the game of life is you don't ever get up from that seat, because you're just locked in, paying attention. Any other game, it's a 3-hour game. You get up after the game is over, you bring your clothes to the hamper, you shower, and you put new clothes on the next day. That's not what you were doing. You were letting this stuff hit you, and you didn't know to do anything about it. And so I'm going to skip the part that I usually talk about, because the way that I healed was by learning breathing practices through an organization called Art of Living. And I learned all about the science of stress and trauma and how it changes our system biologically. And then from healing, ended up, meeting Dr. Pleener after I had gone and taken courses on Qigong meditation and yin yoga and havening and learning TRE from the founder, right? And all these different ways to heal. And now this will hopefully round out your question, Holly, about, the starting of the organization. Was I shared my story when I did heal. And when I saw the feedback, when 150,000 people read it in 3 days, and when I had over 400 calls come in, and it was as far as China, and these calls were all different types of life experiences that different people had gone through. No one was sharing disorder labels. No one was saying, Eric, I have PTSD, I have OCD, I have depression. Instead, it was, I lost a child to SIDS 5 years ago and I've never been the same. Or, I was married and divorced, and I debate for the last 10 years since that divorce has happened whether that was the right decision. I've got this pit in my stomach and it eats away at me all the time. That realization to me was that whatever causes this, whether it's a traumatic life event, whether it's a stressful life event that remains chronic with us, whether it's a decision that we made that we don't drop and we continuously think about and wonder and perseverate whether it's the right one, we all have these buildup of these stresses and traumas. Much like the mud was hitting me, the mud is hitting us from all different directions. And if we don't do anything about it, that mud gets heavy enough that it starts to take us down in the form of either symptoms or disorder or what have you, right? And that's a complete departure from what we're told by the pharmaceutical commercials or what we see in society. Why is it different? Well, I went to these websites of all these nonprofits in our country, and I said, what is not getting through that I didn't know to get help during those 20 years that I was going through what I was going through? But my coaches were telling me to go lift weights and go run stadium stairs. That was okay for my body, but they didn't ask me anything about this. What about these 400 people that called me? Why are they calling me a complete stranger and not actually getting help for this? And I came to the realization, looking at these websites, that there's 3 things that we talk about in this space that were listed on all of these websites consistently that actually move us further away from understanding this topic in an integrative and holistic type of way. So the first one is, they all start with the stat, 1 in 5 people are mentally ill. That might be a stat that the marketers who began with that stat felt like, wow, 43.8 million people is a large number. If we really hammer that number down people's throats, people understand this is affecting a large number of people. But what they're not realizing is there's another side of that equation. What are we telling the other 4 in 5 people, the other 80%? If they're not in the 1 in 5 and people are equating mental health and mental illness, which is unfortunately what happens, that means that we're telling 80% of society, or in the case of America, 280 million plus people, you're healthy, fine, normal, and okay. There's nothing to see here. Don't worry about this. That was problem one. And I fell into that 4 and 5 category before I ended up getting knocked on my butt. Problem number 2 was all these campaigns were an action word followed by stigma. Stop the stigma, erase the stigma, break the stigma. The term stigma means that there's a group of people forming opinions and judgments about another group of people. That doesn't bring us together. That points the finger. That's like stop bullying, right? Stop doing this. When we tell people to stop doing something instead of to start doing something, that pits people against one another. It's this group of people that are forming opinion and judgments about this group over here that we're coddling and that we feel bad for. That's not what mental health is. Mental health lives across this continuum. We're all affected to varying degrees. But right now, between those first 2, the 1 in 5 and the stop the stigma, what are we doing? We're making it a binary topic. You either have it or you don't. And then the final piece was the way in which the celebrities their stories were shared. This is before the era of celebrities writing their own stories. And I'm sure as we get into more of the topic, I still think even the way in which the celebrities are sharing is still holding us back. But back when it was Britney Spears and Lindsay Lohan to start, you had the nonprofit saying, great. Britney Spears is part of our group. She's depressed also. And Lindsay Lohan, she's one of us. She's in the 1 in 5. She's got anxiety. But the only way we were finding out about these stories was from the tabloid media, who were getting their pictures from the paparazzi. And you saw Britney Spears has depression, shaves her head. Lindsay Lohan has anxiety. She dresses like a hot mess. Charlie Sheen has addiction. He looks like a skeleton, right? So you combine these 3 things together, 1 in 5 people, let's stop stigmatizing them. And the them looks like people who shave their head, run off basketball courts, and look like skeletons. No wonder why 80% of the population doesn't take this topic into consideration in the way that it should. So the concept of Same Here, which is an American Sign Language sign, was to say mental health lives on this continuum. Holly, I face challenges, you face challenges. Andrew, I face challenges, you face challenges. Find me a person in this world who hasn't faced challenges in their life and that those challenges haven't impacted their mental health to some degree. I'd like to meet that person because somehow God put them in a bubble and is protecting them and nothing's gone wrong in their life. I've never met someone like that, but again, I'd like to meet him. If we can get people to understand the concept that Andrew described of 5 in 5 instead of 1 in 5, and that we're all on this continuum together, more people will seek help. We won't have to say stop the stigma. We won't be bringing people apart. Instead, we'll be bringing people together on the commonalities in what we all face.
Thank you so much. I just want to recognize your transparency and I can feel like your heart and your spirit, and I adore you. And that's part of why I believe so much in this movement is because of you. You mentioned something that I think resonates with a lot of folks who are on today, because we're talking to folks who either practice or are very interested in functional and integrative medicine. And you mentioned the breathing practice and how before that, conventional medicine had basically told you, you've done everything. We shocked you. That's all we can do. That's it. You're a hot mess. It's done. But your mom and all her wisdom found that that's not all there was. Listen to your mother. So with that, I think, Andrew, it would be great if you could talk to us a little bit more about the STAR practices and what we're talking about when we're talking about that, because I think that's something that a lot of folks here are really going to be excited about and to hear about.
Yeah, absolutely, Holly. So the STAR program was really developed to address some, the problems with the conventional model. One of the problems being, as Eric really dove into, is that there is this false assumption that mental health should be a topic of importance just for a select few, the 1 out of 5 that's diagnosed with, mental disorder or mental illness. And I use that in quotes, based off of everything we just said. The message that we're sending to the remaining 4 out of 5 people is that it's not a topic for them. So they continue to live their life, not making any changes to the way they're living, similarly to how Eric was just going about his life. Meanwhile, the stress and traumas through the challenges that they all go through in life whether it's traumas in the past, worrying about future events or current present events, it continues to build up in their nervous system, actually altering psychological processes, leading to neurobiological outcomes that impacts their mental health to varying degree. So instead of working on it, it continues to just build up, and eventually, just like plaque builds up in the arteries until eventually you get a stroke or a heart attack, this stress and trauma builds up in our system until we end up having our nervous system shut down on us. Eventually, it impacts the way we feel, the way we function, the way we perform, impacting things like clarity of thought, mood, energy, decision making. And eventually, as what happened to Eric, one day you wake up and it feels as though somebody just pulled the plug right out the back of your head. You end up going 2.5 years not having a single original thought enter into your mind. And when you're at that state of disorder, that's when the majority of people will seek help. And, where they turn is, thinking that medication management and traditional talk therapy is the primary model and the most important model based off of what they've seen their whole life in television commercials. And meanwhile, although those are great tools and they are important and they do work, they fail to learn about the many other non-medication exercises to help rewire their nervous system. And it's not just about learning about ways to rewire the nervous system at the point of disorder. We want to actually start teaching resilience and how to improve, optimum wellness. So to address this, we formed another alliance. Our organization consists of several different alliances. We have a celebrity alliance, which is all the different celebrity athletes from the NHL to MLB, music industry, everybody sharing a Same Here story. We have an alliance of influencers sharing the stories as well. That helps get that message across that this is the topic for everybody because we all have a Same Here story. But then we formed this alliance called the Star Practitioner Alliance. And each person in this, each one of the experts in this alliance is an expert at a specific non-medication healing modality. A lot of people in this group would consider it a complementary alternative medicine modality, but we wanted to get away from using the words alternative and holistic. One, because a lot of these modalities have been around longer than alternative practices, and we felt that it did a disservice. Secondly, alternative and holistic, it works for some, it works for many. But then there are a lot of people that will say, I don't want to do anything alternative. I want to go to where the science is, where the medication management is. So we came up with an acronym that we thought actually was catchy to our audience and would really explain the science behind what these modalities do, and that's STAR. STAR stands for stress and trauma, the things that actually hold up in your nervous system. Active release and rewiring exercises. So you consider it the gym for the brain. These are the exercises that you can do to get rid of that stress and trauma and help rewire your nervous system back towards trauma levels. So each practitioner is an expert at a specific STAR exercise. We have people like Amy Weintraub representing yoga. Ravi Shankar, that founded the Art of Living organization, is representing integrative breathing modalities. Stephen Hayes, that developed ACT therapy and relational frame theory, representing ACT therapy. We have many different other types of modalities, TRE, EFT, Qigong meditation, Alpha Stim, CES. And our viewers can, one, learn about these things, as Eric went all this time without knowing about any of them. So they can click on these modalities, read the biography on the expert itself, and then start to learn the science behind how each one of these modalities work. How does integrated breathing modalities help the nervous system? How does accelerated resolution therapy or neurofeedback actually help the body? And we give access to different ways to get involved, whether get connected to a practitioner that does these techniques, or YouTube videos, workbooks, or to take the actual course itself, like the Art of Living. So collectively, our viewers now have options, and they can start to build what we call a mental health toolbox. When we say building a mental health toolbox, the idea behind that is about understanding that mental health, just like physical health, is not a one-size-fits-all model. Medication is a tool. There are many other things that we should be doing as well. If we think about physical health and we live a sedentary lifestyle for several years, just like all the muscles in your body will start to atrophy. You never just do one exercise, like tricep exercises every single day, and now say that you are complete. Because what about chest? What about biceps? What about legs, cardio endurance, and nutrition and brain-gut connection? And the same holds true with the large impacts that stress and trauma has on the circuits, how it causes some parts of the brain to become more active and others to become less active, changes to the hypothalamic, adrenal, pituitary axis, and how this actually impacts the whole body. You would want to do many different combinations. For an example, somebody might get involved with diaphragmatic deep belly breathing to learn about building parasympathetic tone, improved digestion, reduced inflammation. But it doesn't mean that they can't benefit from learning ways, like Eric did, to how to get trapped stress and trauma out of the spine through tension trauma releasing exercises, or things like somatic experiencing, or even the benefit of restoring meridian highways through Qigong meditation. So the goal is, we have a large audience, over 100,000 followers over social media, a big outreach. We want to be able to introduce them to these different techniques and have them work with professionals that understand how to use this together to create a customized mental health toolbox.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful explanation. I really appreciate it. So you both mentioned celebrities. Eric, you have your background with the athletes that I'm familiar with. And it sounds like you've really been able to utilize your connections that you've had, and you started building, you both referenced alliances. I wonder, Eric, if you could tell us a little bit about why you felt like that was important and why that was something you wanted to be part of the Same Here Global movement.
Yeah, thank you. You're getting good at that, the screen switch. That's why I'm go ahead. So one of the issues that I had when I was sharing like what I saw on the websites, I said to myself, all right, before you ever shared your story, and yeah, it's great that all these people read it. It's a one-off. What is it going to do to change society if you just share your story? Andrew, I don't even know if I told you the story. So this is like of all the times we've spoken. I was contacted by I won't say the name of the person, but let's just say he's a doctor on a major network television show, wanted me to come on and tell my story. And I said to him, I just gave away, I said him. So there's only a few out there, but I said to him, it doesn't make sense for me. I don't care about my 15 minutes of fame. You're going to use my story for ratings because it's a sob story that has a decent ending, or at least what so far is a decent ending, and then go on to the next story. And then as I shared that with him, I started to think of like, who else out there has shared their story? Okay, let's take the largest celebrity in the world. Okay, before some of like the controversy that happened in the royal family, I'd say Prince Harry is probably one of the biggest celebrities in the world as it pertains to his area of the world that focuses on him. So the Commonwealth countries, let's call it that, right? Prince Harry, before Kevin Love, before DeMar DeRozan, before any of these other athletes started sharing, he shared in a very vulnerable way. He didn't just say, I've got this thing called depression and just, blamed it on this disorder and then like left it there. He shared the life experiences, the loss of his mother, the holding in the thoughts of fear during that whole time, and what if scenarios, and how those things circled in his mind, and how by going to therapy and being able to untangle those things, right? And he didn't share as much about medication, right? But okay, that could have been part of the situation. But he shared openly life experiences, traumatic events, and how it got him where he was. Well, guess what? As I was researching that, the UK was at a 30-year high in suicide, just like the US was at a 30-year high in suicides. So what that said to me was, okay, we look at athletes in this country like they are, rock star celebrities. If I could get the greatest rock star like a Lady Gaga, if I could get the greatest athlete like a LeBron James, would we really be able to change anything by one person being the name of what we're doing? And that's not to throw, you definitely know other companies out there. I'm not even going to talk about nonprofits. There's companies out there in this space who have one huge celebrity endorser, and it's like, we're going to save the world right now. Look at the numbers, right? If you look at even if a major celebrity has 40 million followers, right? That's from around the world. There's 7 billion people in this world, right? And so maybe this was a grandiose idea in my head, but my thought was I'd rather band together a lot of people, even if they're mid-tier platforms instead of these top platforms. And I want these people that band together to be people who are in this because they care and they want to help people, not because it's an endorsement deal, not because after their playing career is over or their touring career is over, if they're an artist, now they can get money for speaking engagements. No, people who actually care about other people getting better and realize they were put on this earth. Yes, they had great skills in what they did, but that mantle that they were able to now sit on because of their great skills gives them an opportunity to have a greater voice in helping humanity. And those people holding hands together, what that does is it takes away the media's tool. The media's tool is to say, oh, this person went through this. Okay, let's focus on them for 2 weeks. Done with them and their anxiety. Who's the next person who had bipolar? Okay, done with them. Who's the next person who tried to take their life? Okay, suicide. Great. Done with their story. No wonder why we can't get away from this 1 in 5 topic. There's not this thread that ties everyone together. And so the first person I reached out to with this concept of an alliance was a gentleman named Theo Fleury up in Canada. Was a hockey player when I was growing up with a huge name, won a Stanley Cup his first year playing in the league, was a Canadian Olympic gold medalist numerous times, and will probably make the Hockey Hall of Fame when all said and done. But his story, this is what attracted me to his story, was not him out there saying, I have PTSD, I have PTSD, I have PTSD. That's not what he focused on. He focused on his life experience. His life experience was very scary situation. He was raped by a male coach when he was 16 years old over 150 times. Played his whole career, never told anyone about it. And when his career is over, he's got a gun in his mouth rattling between his teeth about to blow his head off because he never knew how to live life on life's terms. Now, fortunately, he ends up telling his story. He gets better. He starts helping other people. And I remember asking Theo, as if I had the right to ask him this. I kind of joke with him when I say this, like, I'm some, average Joe person. I'm talking to him, trying to get him to join this alliance. He's enjoying the conversation, which, by the way, he just responded to a LinkedIn message I sent him, just to show like the serendipity again of it. And I said to him, Theo, would you give up your favorite NHL goal to save someone's life? And no hesitation, he said, Eric, I'd give up my Olympic gold medal and my Stanley Cup ring just to change one person's life. I was put on this earth not to play hockey. Hockey gave me the platform to be able to help and save more people, right? And when I heard that cemented this idea that if we could get people from different segments of society to come together, it doesn't matter that Theo's story is about sexual abuse, that Shamika Holtzclife's story is about the loss of her grandmother and how that created suicidal ideations, and that Keith Bullock's is about growing up in the foster system. Each of us have a different story of how we got there. If we can all share and use the branding to tie us all together, that's something the media can never take away from us, because if we can build our own audience, now we're the ones sharing the story. We're the ones showing the common thread. They can't undercut that. And so that concept of alliance on the celebrity side of things is kind of the same way that I saw, building out this star alliance, building out what Andrew was talking about with the Integrative Expert Alliance that you're on, Holly, right? Is this movement isn't Eric's movement. This movement is the world's movement. And I don't, hopefully that comes off in not a very cocky way, in the opposite way, is that I feel like I'm lucky that the idea came to me just through my life experiences that happened, and then seeing how backwards our world looks at this. And then it was to say, instead of this organization being about Eric's the face of this thing and put him on the front of it, instead making the logo that you see in the top right corner there, that's the face of this thing. The face of this thing is that everyone's got a story. And if we can get alliances to work together, the doctors to take advantage of the fact that celebrities are talking about this, the celebrities to be able to work with the doctors to find out more modalities that are out there, the practitioners to keep adding more and more in the toolboxes, the schools to be able to say they're a Same Here school and they get the concept of it and they want to help their students. What starts to happen is, and hopefully this visual is helpful, I share this with Andrew a lot, is if any of us right now were flying in an airplane and we looked down on the ground and we were like, what defines mental health? You'd see oak trees, you'd see evergreen trees, you'd see all these different trees that don't mix into one forest, because some people think mental health is mental illness. Some people think mental health is what we're talking about across this continuum. Some people think it's the farthest end of the spectrum disorders, bipolar, schizophrenia, right? There's so many different ways that people look at this. And so our concept is plant a lot of same here trees, where what mental health becomes about is about how all of us have stories and share those stories, and we're all interconnected and can get help, all living on this continuum. Eventually, looking from a 30,000 foot view down, you'll see a forest of same here trees growing together. And so it's a timely, it's something that takes time. It's something that takes effort. It's something that takes continuously pounding the same message over and over again. But that's more, to me, that's more effective than having a campaign that separates people, or changing your campaign every year because you need something that's the catchy phrase that's coming up. We got to stay consistent with this. If we keep it as 5 and 5 and all of us are part of this and all of us have a story, eventually that's going to get through even to those of us like the Skip Baylesses of the world who think that they're immune and that there's nothing out there that affects them and it's everybody else. Eventually people are going to take a look and say, that life experience that person described, that sounds kind of similar to something I've been through. Wait a second, maybe this is a topic for me.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I love how the universal feeling of that. And of course, I love trees. I'm looking at, we have so many comments from folks as far as like where they're from. And we have people, you mentioned your hockey friend. We have someone from Canada, a general psychiatrist. We have folks from Washington, Illinois. I see North Carolina, where I grew up. So, go Devils. I see just really all over the map. And so with that in mind, and all these folks seem to be kind of in alignment as far as being interested in mental health, being interested in integrative and functional medicine. Andrew, could you tell us a little more about specifically the Psych Alliance? And I think that's something that folks tuning in would be super interested in knowing about and finding out like what that is and what it means to be a part of that.
Yeah, thank you, Holly. And Eric, everything you just said before, really resonated, very well said. So, on the front end, we have to show everybody that, this is a topic for everybody, 5, 5, and 5, and that there's so much more out there than just simply medication. We talked all about these different STAR exercises, but ultimately what we need to do is use all this outreach that we have and let them know that this integrative world exists, that there is a different way of practicing. Because it was just a few years ago, Eric was in the process of 2.5 years getting treatment, had no idea about integrative medicine, didn't know about any of this, and a large part of the world is in that same boat. All the experts can agree that this is a great way to practice, it's a better way to practice, but we have to get that message out there. And we have an interesting opportunity with Same Here and our brand as a vehicle to get all that outreach. So the thought was that one, we want to be able to, connect all of our viewers that are in need with physicians that practice total patient care, that want to work with people that can get to the source, can explain mind-body connection, that do non-rush sessions, not just the quick 5-10 minutes, I'll see you in 3 months, but, actually spends quality time. And we'll form an alliance of practitioners that can use all these different exercises to really get to the source of things. We'll call it Same Here Psych, representing integrative psychiatry, psychology, psychotherapy, psych nurse practitioning, and ultimately form a large global directory where we can, refer people in the US, globally. And the second aim is to just bring awareness to this movement. If you notice that everybody in this alliance, which you're a part of, Holly, is that everybody shares their own Same Here story. So that furthers the message that this is a 5 and 5 topic. It's not just celebrities, it's not just influencers or everyday heroes, it's the practitioners as well. And some of the questions that are being filled out is really to show how these life experiences actually made us all want to go into a more integrative approach. What is it that we saw was flawed with the conventional model, why this is a better approach, and how does our patients resonate? How do they respond, to this? So the more eyeballs that come to the Psych Alliance, the more the celebrities, the more the influencers, the more everybody's going to realize that this is the better way to practice. So anybody that wants to get involved, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, on Facebook. We're going to share all of that, after, or just reach out at Dr. Pleener at we'reallalittlecrazy.org. Would love to have a conversation with anybody that's interested in getting involved, that wants to be part of this.
And I think, Andrew, just to go deeper into what you're talking about. So first off, what Andrew's talking about with the sharing, the actual directory itself is set up to look like the celebrity directory, the practitioner directory. So what Holly's a part of, what Andrew's a part of, is the same way you see the celebrities up there making a sign. It doesn't look like a directory where it's just a list of doctors. Each of the psychotherapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, they're all making the sign, and the form that Andrew's talking about is each of the practitioners are filling out why they practice this way, but that's listed in their profile, so that when people come to the site, I know when I was searching for someone, it would have been nice to know, why does someone practice that way, as opposed to, oh, they were trained that way, that's why they're that way. No, it's nice to know a little bit about the person. Not that you're revealing anything too private, but something that's personal that made you practice that way. And so, by the way, also, like, nothing referral related. We don't do this for revenue generating purposes. Like, we do this because when Andrew and I spoke, there's a gentleman, someone on the Zoom or the video chat, I guess, might know this. This gentleman, his name is Dr. Richard Brown. He was my Dick Brown is what he goes by. He was my integrative practitioner that I met through Donna, the woman that first helped me as an integrative psychologist, introduced me to Richard Brown in New York City as an integrative psychiatrist. And I left that first session, first off, trying out his alpha stim machine. But secondly, he said to me at the end, Eric, here's a list of 15 other things we can try. And if these 15 don't work, there's another 15 that are after that, another 15 that are after that. Coming from someone who was so scarred by hearing this is your last resort, that was so comforting to hear someone say, we have things in our pocket we could keep bringing out, keep trying for you. And that made me continue to have more and more hope. And so when people would call me after hearing my story and say, Eric, can I see your doctor? I live in Montgomery, Alabama, or I live in Tucson, Arizona. I'm willing to fly out to New York to meet with Dr. Brown. One, logistically, that was a problem. Two, Dr. Brown gets sent on all these, crusades to like Uganda and everywhere to teach breathing practices. It was hard for me to refer Dr. Brown to him because he just didn't have any time. And then for people to fly all the way there. So when I was introduced to Dr. Pleener, actually through a family friend, I said, I can't believe how much you remind me of Dr. Brown. Would you be open to forming this and finding other people, holding hands and getting a lot of practitioners together who practice in the same way? And, again, not for a referral fee, not because we want to take a piece of this, but because there's millions of Erics who are out there who are laying in a bed and have no friggin' idea how to get help. And let's use the eyeballs that we're getting, which candidly to everyone who's on this chat is not where we want it to be. Hopefully 10 years from now will be where we want it to be, but it's more than we thought it would be in the 2+ years we've been doing this. And it's continuing to grow. And as it grows, we want to use the popularity of it to say, this is not just about building a brand. This is about getting people to the help that they need as quickly as they can, and then helping you all who provide the help get in touch with those people so that you can be there to help them. Because I'm telling you, being on the patient side of things, we don't hear about these modalities and the terms that Andrew brought up before. I'm going to add a couple of terms to him. He used 2. I'm going to use 4. Eastern, functional, holistic, and alternative. Those 4 terms, when they're described to you, the initial reaction, at least here in the West, is, what are you selling me? What is that stuff? That stuff doesn't work. And that's why the STAR acronym came about, is fine, let's tell people what these practices actually do for you. Let's show them how the buildup of stress and trauma, just like the buildup of plaque in our arteries, we can work that out by doing cardiovascular exercises and eating well, what can we do to start to get our central nervous system healthy? So hopefully that I wanted to add just some color to the practitioner piece. One, to explain why we're building what we're building and let everyone out there know if you join, it's totally just to try and help people get to the source, but also know what you're joining in terms of the information you're going to be putting out there, so that more and more people who are searching don't look at just a list anymore. And then the list is just a couple of words and a contact information. No, we want people to know who you are so that they feel comfortable in coming to see you.
That's great. You know, something you guys know this, and I think a number of folks who are watching may be in a similar boat as myself, is that I'm in a private practice. I do integrative psychiatry. And something I've realized now that I'm looking at marketing and things like that is that a lot of folks who need my services don't necessarily know, just like Eric, like where to look, or that integrative psychiatry, psychology, functional medicine is even a thing. And so something that you guys have started to do, which I think is super important, because you're bringing the skills and the work to people where they're at, is you're partnering with different organizations outside of just psychiatrists, psychologists, what have you. So I'm hoping you guys could touch a little bit on why you're doing that, how that works. Andrew, we can start with you if you want to talk a little bit about the organizations you've been partnering with.
Yeah, sure. So ultimately, the movement, you know, it took really fast. You know, Eric shared his story, woke up a few days later to 150,000 followers. The alliances are slowly starting to grow, you know, influencers, celebrities, the practitioners, Same Here Psych. And through this movement of, you know, everybody goes through challenges, it's you know, different teams have actually reached out, teams in you know, different industries, whether we're talking about sports, you know, NBA, whether, you know, Phoenix Suns or, you know, Washington Wizards. Eventually the NBA as a whole just recently got involved with us for larger programmatic events. MLB, New York Mets changing their, you know, mental health awareness night to Same Here City after Citi Field. It's actually supposed to be, you know, in May, but got, you know, postponed due to COVID. But fully blown Same Here mental health awareness night. Everybody goes to the game, has to get a Same Here t-shirt with a panel in between innings to really talk about the 5 and 5 concept and the importance of integrative modalities. Warner Brothers, using members of the Celebrity Alliance for the Ben Affleck movie, we started going to some of their pre-screenings, having members from that alliance talk about, you know, the organization. Schools recently, we have a Same Here program where our curriculum is now being introduced to K through 12s across New York and then overseas through our partner organization, Beluga. I'll let Eric dive into more of the deliverables for some of these programs, you know, especially for the schools, some of the things that we're working on now. There might be people here interested in hearing about, but ultimately, the more organizations that we get involved with, the more we want all the members of the alliances to get involved. So as we start doing things programmatically, whether different sports teams and schools, and there's anything involved with the integrative space, we want people from our alliance to have opportunities to get involved. This is not something, Eric hit on this before, that one person alone can't change the world. Everybody has to hold hands together. Celebrities, influencers, everyday people, and practitioners. And Eric, if you want to dive into the actual deliverables behind some of these programs, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when we started building programming, the challenge was, if we truly believe this is a topic for 5 and 5, that means there's 7 billion people on this planet who need to hear these messages, right? How do you get to 7 billion people, right? Now, that might sound like it's grandiose and utopian to get that far, but our thought was, okay, where can we congregate where groups already exist? So we ended up creating 5 areas of focus, so all named after Same Here. So the K through 12 program became Same Here Schools. Then the college program became Same Here Sit Downs. And I know that there's a lot of alliteration off the S, but the college one, I'll give you the genesis of each. So Same Here Schools is easy enough to figure out. Same Here Sit Downs was because we had athletic directors say to us, good luck getting our students to sit in one place for more than even an hour at a time to listen to something like mental health. Okay, challenge accepted, right? And we get into the deliverables of the program itself. So those are called Same Here sit downs. Offices, we call them Same Here safe. The reason why is when we did focus groups, the number one term that came up most often was, I don't feel safe talking about it for fear I'm not going to get promoted, or worse, I'm going to get let go. Same Here service, which we hopefully soon will be able to announce some pretty cool things and working with some industry partners that are helping us get into the community, work with first responders, military directly. Already we've done stuff on our own, but having more corporate backing is certainly helpful. And then the final one, Same Here sports, right? So sports teams, leagues, kind of what Andrew just described before. So we felt like those 5 areas doesn't cover everyone in the world, right? But it covers a large chunk of people. Most people are either in school or in an office, right, in some way. And so within each of those, then we have deliverables within each of them, and about 7 deliverables for each one. The idea being, let's use schools as an example, as opposed to going through all 5 of them. Most organizations that we looked at in this space, if they were a school mental health organization, they were either a speaker series or an individual speaker, or they were a curriculum company. I don't think either of those by themselves in a vacuum change a culture of everyone in this. Every stakeholder is in this ecosystem. So using schools is a curriculum and a speaker, even if you have everyone listen to them or go through it, is that going to change parents, teachers, administrators, paraprofessionals? It's a lot of people to change, and it takes a lot over time. So yeah, we have your traditional assembly programs, right, which are culture, setting programs, but then we have professional development on top of that, and we have curriculum, and we have an app that connects teachers and students to be able to share feelings and emotions, and it's tied to a scale. If people go to our website, they can look at that, helps people see, hey, mental health is something that's constantly moving, that we can all go up and back on an ongoing basis. We create STAR practice rooms, which are gyms for the brain in the schools. We create student-led mental health clubs where students really get behind it, and it's an empowerment brand instead of it being like, the Cheerful Mind group, right? No, it's about the mascot in their school and how everyone gets behind it and has a voice, right? We want this to be a cheerful, uplifting thing for people. And then the final piece usually with these is the ongoing engagement, where, especially in today's virtual world, we'll get with whatever group we're working with, that we're consulting with, on a once every 2 months or so basis, and do, recap, course correct on what's gone on for the last 2 months and what are the goals for the next 2 months. And so when you work with schools, offices, et cetera, on a cadence and on a set of deliverables that help change the culture over time, you're now weaving that into their everyday. That becomes a part of their culture, as opposed to, wait, we checked the box and we did that. We covered mental health for the year, right? And I understand budgets are tight for everyone, and that's why we work with everyone individually. I understand that time is tough, but I'll say this when it comes to the timing piece, is one of the best lines I heard was from one of the schools that we have a year-long partnership with. It's in Manhasset, Long Island, and their superintendent, he said, Eric, I get pushback from parents and teachers that we already have so much on our plate. And his response was, social and emotional wellness is the plate. If you don't have a plate, you can't put anything else on there. So mental health has to be stable. It has to be in a good place, or else kids aren't going to learn. They'll memorize for the short period of time they need to memorize for a test, but they don't learn, right? And so hopefully that helps kind of explain the bigger picture here. Andrew went into the examples of, in a good way, of what we do with the sports teams, which is more of like the frontward marketing piece. But hopefully that helped people understand, when we get in the trenches with each of these organizations, what our boots on the ground type of work looks like.
Okay. I'm going to put the 3 of us on here because I know we're getting, we're just past the hour, and I see a lot of excitement from the folks who are tuning in, which is great. And I appreciate, because I know the feeling, because when I hear all these things, like, my mind starts going a million places an hour, you hear about the schools, especially right now when folks are suffering through the pandemic and the remote learning. And You guys didn't even touch on the scale that you can use with kids to identify how they're feeling every day and how they can touch base with their teachers. I mean, there's so much information and so many places that people can look to get involved. So if someone's like super excited, and like I said, I feel them, what are the best ways for them to get involved and jump in?
So our emails are always open. So we'll type them. Maybe I don't know. I'm not as good with StreamYard as I am with. So okay, there we go. So those are our two email addresses. Thank you for putting that up there, Holly. Another easy way to remember it, if you forget our names, is we have a schools at weareallalittlecrazy.org as well. Another way to remember it is our website is samehereglobal.org. So if you go to samehereglobal.org, if you go to the contact pages, all of our contact information is on there. So you can click on that. And our social media channel, that's what I've had up under my name there, but at @samehere_global, you can write us that way as well. So, it's one of those type of teams where everyone knows each other and it's easy for us to pass things on and to get it to the right person. It won't get lost, like if someone gets a t-shirt, for example, from our store to help support us, they're getting a personalized email from us. That's just the way that we like to interact with people. It's the same thing here. If you reach out, no more than 24 hours, but hopefully just within a couple hours, we'll be able to get back and converse. So yeah, would love to hear from folks. And to Andrew's point with the Practitioner Alliance, I know a big focus, a lot of folks here is on the practitioner side of things. We just want to help people get resources and get to the right folks. And sounds like the people who are on this call and the people that you're seeing comments from are the right people. So would love to link up with you.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. I'm just looking to see if I have anything that we need to, mostly I'm going to let you guys probably look at these comments afterwards, and
Okay.
because I think you'll just be thrilled to see how much excitement there is. I really appreciate everyone tuning in and joining our movement. Like I said, I found these guys. I'm super excited to be a part of it. I just from reading folks' comments, I'm super excited for you guys to join us. And thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for running this, Holly. Really appreciate it. Holly's the technologist behind all this, who understands how to run StreamYard, and we should probably, like, on Chris's behalf, thank Holly also, right? Because
yeah, for sure. Thank you, Chris, for having us, for sure.
Thank you, Chris, for hosting us.
Yeah, sorry, this is my first time with 3 people, so like doing the twisty turny was an adventure. So thank y'all for letting me play with it a little bit and be impatient. All right, bye everybody.
Bye everyone.